I want to introduce briefly our guest today. His name is Brandon Day. He's the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Data One Merchant Services. We're going to be talking a little bit about website, mobile, and touchless payments today. Very, very important for what we have going on. And of course, how does all this play together in the time we are in? Brandon is a South Florida guy. In Palm Beach Gardens. Data One's a member of ours here in Palm Beach Gardens as well. But Brandon, I'm going to let you take it away, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for everybody who's tuning in.
Absolutely. And Joe, I appreciate the opportunity, and all of you in attendance. Thank you for allowing me to pour into you for the next 15 minutes or so. It's really been an interesting year. And I think that is true for each and every one of us, regardless of where you're located and regardless of your path of life, right? I think we have been dealt a global pandemic, and many of us are tasked with figuring out how to weather the storm, how to remain relevant as a tech provider, as a tech partner, as a service provider, as a business, And so today's focus, I kind of take a Zig Ziglar approach to teaching. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you, and then I'll tell you what I told you. And so today, we're going to look into the future. How does technology and how do payments intersect? And what does that mean for us as business people and as consumers? What can we expect to see here in America based on other trends across the planet using travel, kind of as our case study. And so that's really the arc of the presentation. We'll take a look back before we take a step forward together. And just a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. I went to high school in Savannah, Georgia. Went to school at Florida State University. And that's actually where I met my wife. We moved to South Florida as boyfriend and girlfriend. And I started a career in banking and finance. And shortly thereafter, realized I was going to be a dad. So I did have to grow up a little quicker than some of my peers. But that's okay. I get to retire early, or at least that's what I tell myself every day. And another thing about me is I'm one of those weirdos. I actually like what I do. And here's why. I mentioned at the onset of the networking, Data One is a technology company that happens to be in the payment space. And what keeps the work fresh is every business, every organization is a little bit different. And their needs will be different. And therefore, our tech footprint, our solution to them would be different. And the heart of what we do, I'm sure the only reason Joe keeps us around is, the heart is to help people. We're not out to sell merchant accounts or technology or really sell our services. I take great gratification in my work because we get paid to help other people save money. We get paid to help our communities thrive and become more profitable and more efficient. And we use technology to make that happen. And so that's why we're here and who I am, a little bit about me and Data One, our business. Like Joe said, we're corporately located, headquartered in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. We have an office in Savannah and operations in Phoenix and service clients in all of North America. So Mexico, Canada, and the 50 United States. So privileged to be here and talk a little bit about payments. Wasn't sure if I get the opportunity to share my screen. Looks like I have those permissions. So trust me, I surround myself with tech people, so I don't have to be as techy, but I'm going to do my best here to present my screen. And Joe, if you can see that, just give me a thumbs up. So, all right, there it is. So there's my mean mug. I took that with an iPhone. We talk about technology, how far we've come. Think about what our cell phones are capable, and think about most of us on the call today. We saw the evolution of the personal computer. We saw the evolution and death of the fax machine. And of course, the mobile phone went from a leather bag plugged into a cigarette adapter in a car to the iPhone and took this lovely headshot. So again, the arc of today's presentation is just to talk a little bit about the evolution of payments, what we've seen over the past 4 years, but more specifically, what have we seen over the past 4 months? And what I would refer to as a post-COVID economy. And what are the challenges that all of us are going to face as we position ourselves to the future? If you take a look at your screen, this is what I think the future is going to look like. These are the types of things that keep me up at night. You know, as our cities become interconnected with smart technology and automated vehicles and rideshare become more prevalent, think about the time savings that we have as consumers and business people when we're in that environment. And whether you're in a virtual reality or an augmented reality, or you're simply on your laptop commuting to work or commuting somewhere, being able to do work because the ride is automated and safe, interconnected as a society. The point is, money and commerce and technology make the world go round. It always has. And so, how do we build towards this future? I think this is what the future will look like. Everything being interconnected with wearable technology. It's your passport, it's your wallet, it's your identification. It's all those things in one place. We will see iterations of these things in our lifetime, and you've already done that. We've gone from checkbooks to credit cards to mobile wallets to RFIDs to QR codes. You know, we've really just seen a lot of change, you know, in the infrastructure around payments technology. And so again, that's why I'm really passionate about what I do. I'm excited about the implications of the future. And again, I told you before we go forward, we're going to take a look back. This is what I walked into in the payments industry. And this was really back in 2008. So it wasn't that long ago, a little over 12 years ago, I got into the payment space. And these were some of the technology solutions that most of the businesses were using. So whether you went to your doctor or you went to the grocery store or you e-commerce wasn't even really a thing at this time. I mean, it was an emerging kind of industry type back in '08, but this was the equipment of then. The piece in the bottom right is what we refer to as the knuckle buster. I don't know if any of you remember these, but a merchant would have a carbon piece of paper, put a credit card on it, and actually swipe this knuckle buster device to get an imprint of the card. And then their customer would sign it, and then they would remit it for a payment. Obviously, this is antiquated technology. If you're looking for a good referral for Data One, very simply put, you see any of these dinosaurs, it's a good referral for our business. But as you can tell, things have changed. Naturally, one of those multipliers, force multipliers of change is COVID. We just were dealt this global pandemic. Businesses across the planet shuttered. I mean, completely stopped, mandated, you know, by the government. And I personally had never seen anything like that in my life. And the way we at Data One weathered the downturn, we're mapping technology solutions to our clientele and attracting new business that way. But the reality is, regardless of who you are set with a new, are tasked with a new set of challenges. How are you going to deliver your goods and services in a safe and clean manner to the clientele? If you're a nonprofit event, think about this. You haven't been able to do your golf events or your galas or your auctions. So how do we curb expenditures, right? And how do we become more profitable? How do we make up, all of us, for this lost time? I think are the questions and challenges that are posed to us in this post-COVID reality, and the way businesses and consumers are reacting to that, and the way the banks are reacting to that is through contactless payments. And contactless payments, as they sound, are contactless. The acronym is NFC. NFC means near field communication. And so that photo on the right of this screen, very simply put, is a contactless payment. Someone's using their Apple Wallet on a Clover Mini to make a contactless payment. And in this post-COVID reality, all of us are sensitive to where we put our hands and what we touch. And so when we're interfacing with businesses that want us to hand them our plastic from our wallet and they touch it, or maybe we have to stick it in their PIN pad and touch the keys of a gas station or a grocery store at Whole Foods. I mean, let's be honest, this is not sanitary. And so this is how technology in today's post-COVID economy can deliver a safe alternative to the dirty lucre of cash. What are you guys seeing? I mean, at least here in South Florida, I can go to Dunkin' Donuts and I can go to Hobby Lobby and I see the same sign: due to the nationwide coin shortage, we are not making change. Please pay with exact cash or with an electronic payment. So for us, we see those implications and are excited about it. I don't think there's a coin shortage. I think this is rooted in one of two things: sanitary procedures, keeping the staff and the consumer safe. But also from a tracking standpoint, electronic payments are trackable, so there's probably some government influence there, on the actual exchange of paper money. But as we go through today's presentation, what you're going to see is that technology and payments have really changed consumer behavior. On the right, you'll see the Apple Watch, very familiar product. Love the Apple Watch. They're appealing to consumers. They look cool. They're neat. They're not terribly expensive. But when you adopt a piece of wearable technology, well, now you've just eliminated the need to touch plastic or touch a payment terminal. Just like in the previous slide, you can use your Apple Watch or your piece of technology, your wearable technology, to remit a payment to a business. So this is another example of way businesses today in this post-COVID economy have pivoted so that they are delivering their goods and services in a clean manner with a very minimal lack of our probability of transmission. Now, I realize this is a PowerPoint. I'm 40. This is what I grew up with. To me, this is as tech as it gets. And there's going to be a lot of copy, and I'll share this with Joe and his team so they can email this presentation to you. But I did grab a quote from an industry white paper, and that's what's on your screen. We looked at this National Restaurant Foundation for insights to what's going on in the marketplace. And this is a quote from the National Restaurant Foundation, just speaking to how retailers are making these changes in face-to-face environments. That way, these contactless payments can be accepted. And it really changes, again, what we refer to as consumer behavior. What I love about technology is it improves processes or it enhances what I call the user experience. And payments is no different. If you've ever been to a store and their credit card machine's not working, we know what that feels like. Or they're like, oh, you got to go down to the block to the ATM machine. I mean, again, we know what that feels like. It's inconvenient. And if you've ever remitted a contactless payment, it's safe, it's secure, it's clean, and it's fast. And so these are the types of discussions that we're having on a day in and day out basis at Data One, just trying to find ways to, in this pandemic, to keep everybody safe and to keep our business community functioning. Again, using that same white paper from the National Restaurant Foundation, out of 67% of the people they surveyed, they've already gone into some form of contactless payment. And we're seeing a significant uptick through these payments that have been contactless in just about every business type. And I know website payments was part of the agenda, but the reality is website payments are relatively basic, in the sense that it's usually a virtual terminal or an API key or a payment gateway built into a website. And the programmer or the shopping carts really change the dynamics of that type of thing. And so I felt what would be most valuable for the group today was really just to share some of the statistics and things that are happening around you that you might not have recognized. And so on this screen here, you'll see this little Wi-Fi signal on a credit card. And this is how our banks in America are reacting to COVID. We are issuing more contactless credit cards. So even if you don't have a piece of wearable technology, maybe you're not using a digital wallet, maybe you don't have an Apple Watch or a Visa Ring or another solution of that sort, no problem. Banks are deploying now contactless cards. And this is 4 years after we did smart chips. And I showed you that slide of where I came from in payments because I saw all of these things. I saw us go from the knuckle buster and those dinosaur terminals to terminals that took the smart chip cards. You'll see this acronym on the bottom of the screen. It says EMV. We are a business riddled with acronyms. What EMV stands for is Europay, MasterCard, and Visa. In layman's terms, smart chips. What's interesting about America, we're about 5 to 10 years behind the other countries on this planet as it relates to payments, technology, and infrastructure. And so 4 years ago, we caught up with the rest of the planet and started issuing and deploying the technology necessary to take EMV or smart chip payments. And with that comes the ability to take these contactless payments and even contactless credit cards. So if you go into your person wallet and you see that icon on your credit card, good news, you can actually use it on a NFC enabled device, a near field communication enabled device to remit a contactless payment, even without wearable technology. And so this is an example of how America, more specifically our banking infrastructure, is trying to catch up and solve for the things we've seen here in COVID. So in 2016, like I said, about 4 years ago, smart chips came to America. And guess what? Companies like Data One were deploying technology into the marketplace that allowed merchants to take contactless payments. Look what's happened just in the course of a year, or check that, 4 years here in America. Massive adaptation of contactless payments for us as consumers and for the merchants. To look at it post-COVID, I think even more interesting. And again, my data is about as current as the end of July. Post-COVID, even more exciting, more adaptation. So what does the future look like, folks? I think contactless payments, or what we refer to as frictionless payment environments, will be the future. Will retail die? No, it won't. Will retail be forced to become smart retail? It absolutely will. And whether that's the burden of carrying the hourly rate or whatever it may be, the safety and sanitary of the commerce itself, or sanitation of the commerce. The only way for us to really know how America will react as we continue to adopt these contactless payments would be to look again across the planet at other countries that have been doing this longer. And so for me, I grabbed England and transit as a really interesting case study, because in England, just like America, as I showed you a few slides earlier, the usage of contactless payments was anemic. Many people didn't have the technology and they weren't using it. But when the London transport system decided to start accepting contactless payments, what blew my mind is 1 year later, they had 1 million passengers each day in the UK using contactless payments. And so again, it's really just paints that picture of how technology and payments can shape the buyer psychology and how we do business. And just like in America, 2015, they start taking in London contactless payments in the transit authority. They see that that significant growth curve. And that's what the data shows us, that in the UK, in just a year, credit card payments actually exceeded the amount of cash payments. And when I say credit card payments, please don't think plastic. Think electronic payment, right? Think your software, think your website, think your tech solution, these contactless solutions we're talking about here in a retail environment. The short is, just like the checkbook died, it wouldn't surprise me if at some point in time, it was a push for all digital contactless payments, and then eventually a push for a cryptocurrency or digital asset of some sort. I don't know if I'll see all of that in my lifetime. I'm 40 years young, but considering what we've seen in my 12 years in the payment space, it's been nothing shy of amazing. And again, how it impacts us as a community, I think is really exciting. So based on what we've seen in the UK, based on what we've seen in other markets across the planet. I do think that since our banking infrastructure has changed, and since the infrastructure for companies like ours have changed, and the types of solutions and technology that we put into the marketplace is designed for these frictionless, contactless, clean and quick, safe and effective payments, we can expect, and the data suggests, a 30% increase just in the next year as a result of COVID. And here in New York, the MTA, which is the largest in the United States, the largest transit authority in the United States, they just recently embraced contactless payments. And again, just like we saw in London, I think that could be the tipping point for us as a society to really push into this all digital age. I grabbed a quote from the guy that heads up contactless payments here at Visa. His name is Daniel Stanford. And he does say transit, is really one of the biggest use cases that has driven this consumer behavior and this adoption around the world. And I love it. That isn't until COVID, of course. COVID changed everything, travel included. But let me give you this example. Today, you go to the airport, you need to fly. I think the last thing that you're going to want to do is print out your boarding pass and put it in the security bin and, walk through security and hand it to the attendant and put it back in your pocket. We can put our boarding passes on our iPhones today. And that's what this is all about, how we marry technology and prepare ourselves and position ourselves to the future so that we're nimble and relevant and we're delivering our goods and services in a clean and safe manner. So Business Cat says that what we do today, is position ourselves in our business to provide these contactless solutions. If you're not in a retail setting, great. You're already doing that through a software website payment. But in those retail environments, we need to be doing smart retail. We need to be able to transact business in a way that's safe, it's easy, and helps people get in and out, without getting sick. And so that's kind of a 50,000 foot view of what's happened in the past decade here in payments, but more specifically over the past 4 months. And as we all are tasked with dealing with this post-COVID economy, I think these are the types of things that will be the discussions that businesses will need to have with themselves and with their stakeholders, because each of us are concerned, with staying healthy. I mean, you can't put a price tag on life. And so this is where, at least in our world, payments and technology intersect, and they help us to start shaping the future. And so if there are any questions, that was really it for my presentation. I appreciate that opportunity, Joe, to present to your team. And I'm happy to ask or answer any questions you might have to the best of my ability.
Awesome. Well, I'll ask if anyone has any questions, simply go to the bottom of your Zoom if you're on Zoom with us, and you can put like a little, you can raise your hand on there very simply enough. And if anyone is on either Facebook or LinkedIn, feel free to post your questions into chat, and we will take those from there. But we'll start off, Brandon. I'll throw a first question out there. I mean, I think really what we're talking about here is the end of credit cards as we know them. And where do you see that entire industry going? Or as we go contactless, are we going to still have all of these? Maybe you could just dive into what your grand vision is, if anything, of the end of the credit card, maybe.
No, I love it. And I think, will we see the end of the credit card? The answer there is no. The need to remit a payment for goods and services doesn't go anywhere. However, the actual plastic that we carry, I think, will die, just like the checkbook died. And here's the implications, or the technology that will be most disruptive to our industry. As a payments facilitator, right, we get paid to turn plastic into dollar bills, right? That's what we do at Data One. The biggest threat to our industry is peer-to-peer payments and blockchain technology. If you think about it, if I can go peer-to-peer, just like with Venmo or Cash App or Zelle, without a third-party payment facilitator, that's the threat to us as a whole. However, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and Amex, those are pretty big companies, global brands at that. And I don't think they're going anywhere, at least in our lifetime. So what we will see, Joe, most likely is the plastic will go away, similar to what we've talked about in the presentation. We'll see more contactless payments and more electronic payments. But I don't think the need to move money goes anywhere. I still think people looking to purchase goods and services, we've got to be able to monetize that. And so what comes first? You know, is it blockchain? Is it a digital asset? You know, once everyone has a cryptocurrency and the government's been able to say, this is mine and I want to tax that and regulate that, then I think as a planet, everyone will use it. But that's why it's somewhat of an amoeba at this point in time.
Yeah. So we got a bunch of questions here. I'm going to try and get through this best we can. First of all, from Sridhar Alani from Office Depot, one of the directors over there. He asked very simply, does contactless reduce fraud or pose more risk?
That's a great question. I actually find a contactless payment to be more secure for a number of reasons. If you think about Apple Pay used to require a thumbprint. Now it requires facial ID or a passcode to authenticate the transaction. You couple that with the fact that your phone has a unique user ID. So for us, the payment processor, we actually find that to be a safer and more secure transaction. It clears at a lower rate because there's actually lower risk. What's interesting to the retailer though, and this is an interesting dynamic from a legislative standpoint that would be interesting for them to tackle. When a merchant takes a contactless payment, they actually pay more for that transaction than they would if the consumer stuck it in the equipment and entered a PIN number. And it's for the same reasons. Just like money anywhere on the planet, regardless of what we're talking about, whether it's a mortgage loan or whether it's a credit card interest rate or car note, rates are a reflection of risk. And so the lowest risk transaction based on United States standards, let me asterisk it with that, is a PIN debit transaction, because we know that consumer was face-to-face with the merchant. We got the read from the smart chip and they remitted a PIN number, extra safe. Therefore, the merchant pays the lowest rate possible for that kind of transaction. And so a lot of the legislative changes, and great question, are around that world for the merchant, because the merchants need to take these contactless payments just like they do everywhere else on the planet. But the problem is they're holding the bag financially. I mean, it's fractions of a percentage, but hey, if it's Office Depot, it adds up quite nicely, right? And what's interesting is in the United States, our business consumers actually pay higher interchange costs than any other market on the planet. So explain that to me, right? And so that's really a big push in our industry. Merchants and business people, nonprofit groups are passing that fee to the consumer. There's been a change over the past 2 years. It's what we refer to as a cash discount pricing model, to where businesses said, you know what, I'm tired of picking up these fees. I want to be able to accept credit cards because I know that's important, but I don't want to pay for it. And so now you're seeing these groups use technology to pass that fee to the consumer at point of sale. And so again, short answer, rates are a reflection of risk. Lowest rate transaction in America is a PIN debit transaction. As we make this push to contactless payments, they're not capturing the PIN number. And although it's safer and cleaner and more efficient and technically more secure, from a processor standpoint, they pay a little more for that transaction. And so there's a big legislative effort for them to go back to an environment where those interchange costs go down.
Awesome. Next, we're going to go to Eric, and he's going to ask his question live here.
Hey, Brandon. So I know you said in the presentation that America was years behind, a few years back. I was just wondering how far behind we are now.
Great question. I would say you're still a 3 to 5 year lag, from other markets. The biggest change for us was getting into smart chips. And that was a big overhaul from us from a infrastructure standpoint. Here's what I mean. The banks had to issue the smart chip cards to all of us. Then the merchants or the business community had to upgrade their technology and hardware to be able to accept that smart chip payment. But what's also interesting and typical, governance here in the States is if they didn't make those changes, there was a liability shift. And so if there was a dispute on a credit card sale, the liability went from to the least EMV compliant party, which meant this: if I used a smart chip card in a business that didn't have a smart chip enabled terminal and I disputed that transaction, believe it or not, that business owner automatically lost and automatically loses. Let me be present tense with that, because they are the least EMV compliant party. And so great question, Eric. We're still 3 to 5 years behind. I'm looking at data in the UK, and that's kind of what was presented. And we can see there's these indicators here in the States, like the New York MTA. Once our citizens in New York, their transit authority, they're using contactless just like they did in London. I think we're going to see, again, just mass adoption on contactless payments. And it won't be long. It won't be long to where we're all on the same playing field. And I think that's
they have technology that we don't have?
No, it's just regulatory.
Okay.
It's regulatory. So, again, there's a lot of money in banking and credit and issuing credit and processing payments. So I think that has something to do with it.
All right. We have time for one more question. So we're going to go to Edwin Hernandez. If you're still on here, you want to ask your question live?
Yeah, sure. So I just wanted to see what your thoughts are on how WeChat and the QR codes in China, how's that and like a different contactless payments solution, and if it's something that is being adopted or will be adopted here, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, QR codes, definitely relevant. Definitely in the Asian Pac community, you see more QR technology in general for payments. I'm not sure if America goes QR code. Let me just speak specifically to that. We have the technology and the ability to do that. It's been there for some time. I would think if we don't just go straight digital and wearable technology, Dr. Hernandez, I think one of the newer iterations that you can plan for is what we refer to as biometric payments, to where you can actually charge your card with your thumbprint or an iris scan and use unique identifiers from the body to actually authenticate transactions. So that's really a unique retail technology that's coming down the pike. As it relates to business payments, you're seeing a lot of change there, a lot of disruption in how one business pays another business. And these are things like Visa's developing a coin strictly for B2B payments. And so oftentimes those merchants carry a higher cost of credit card processing because they're not capturing the magstripe data or the data from the smart chip, more risk, higher rates. And that's how we, from an infrastructure standpoint, help those businesses stay profitable and keep their costs down, is through these types of iterations in payment technology. So QR codes definitely mainstream in Asian Pac countries. Will America adopt it? To be determined. If I had to bet, I'm going to say we go more digital asset wearable technology or biometric authentication before we get into QR code.
All right, I think we're just at about 6:30 here, so we are out of time. For those, check out that website there. Brandon, really quick, say what your email and how to get a hold of you is if anyone else has any questions.
Sure. Website here on your screen, email available on my LinkedIn profile. If we're not friends on LinkedIn, let's get connected. My email is my first name, Brandon, Brandon, period, my last name, Day, and that's like Monday or daytime, DAY, at data1ms, just like the web address on your screen.com. And we're here to serve. If there's questions, curiosities, I'll share this PowerPoint with you guys so you can repurpose it as you deem fit. But just really excited about everywhere we're going, as a tech community, what Joe and Nikki and Monica are putting together here, and the vision not just for South Florida, but again, like what we've talked about today. You know, when we take technology and payments and we put it together, you really shape, the way we do commerce and buyer psychology. And it's just a landscape that's constantly changing, especially in this post-COVID reality. So I just thank you for giving me the time, to share that with you.
And thank you very much for sharing it, Brandon. Of course, being a member of Palm Beach Tech, for those that don't know, you can go to southfloridatech.com, check out, learn more, get engaged, and of course, hop on next Monday. We're doing these tech talks every single Monday at 5:30. You can tune in on Zoom. You can tune in on Facebook and of course on LinkedIn. So thank you all for coming out and asking questions. Appreciate it. And hope everyone enjoys the rest of your week.
We appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye all.